Hello and welcome back to Stranded Deep, welcome back to Pacific Paradise, and welcome back to this item we are making. Last time we were working on a little survivors camp to go with our crashed DC-3, the aeroplane that is up in the trees, the aeroplane that also has a fallen tree so you can climb up onto the trailing edge even though, unusually, the airframe is still off the ground. So we have a pond behind the tail. We have ourselves a happy little survivors camp, the happy little survivors camp with the happy little skeletons in it, because maybe the crew didn't find escape, maybe they just wanted to stay on the island. But if you're joining us for the first time, we are on the PC version of the map editor, and the controls are W to go forward, S to go back, A to go left, D to go right, Q to go down, E to go up, right click and hold to pan the camera around, and as ever, a warning, because we have our raise and lower height, our set height, and our smooth height. If we crank the mount slider up and paint around the outside of the island using the smooth height to give ourselves a nice soft beach because sand is soft, and then we said, oh, you know what? We need to either raise or lower the terrain. That mount slider is still cranked all the way up, so if I were to left click now, I would punch a hole straight through to Cthulhu's bedroom. There is no undo in the game, so save often, and remember this mount slider, always crank it all the way down. It might be inconvenient when you click and nothing happens and you have to move it up a little bit, but it's better than ruining your map. Also, just select objects when you're not painting the terrain because that'll avoid a misclick. So with that out of the way, I was asked, is the map editor also available on console versions of the game? And apparently it is. It looks different, it behaves slightly different, but it still relies on your imagination and creativity, so have at it, absolutely. And can you learn anything from watching someone use the PC version? I would say quite possibly. So, with that in mind, we're going to carry on. So we have been working on a little vignettes. We have put in an airplane and a pine forest. We still need to add the forest floor. We need to add smaller plants and other debris, but there are some caveats, as you could probably see as we were doing the intro, because the more things we add, the harder it is to click on things in order to select them. Kind of easy when everything is fairly spread out, but as soon as you get into multiple trees being placed very close together, yeah, it's hard to click on things and select them. There is no item list. Terrain and objects will deselect whatever you have selected. Also, the camera speed is not constant, so as we move through here, it will speed up and slow down kind of seemingly at random. It's to do with the closeness to terrain, and it's also to do with closeness to objects. So sometimes you'll be working on something and it looks like you've got low frames per second, but it's just not. It's the camera just not having constant velocity. Anyway, I thought what we could do is jump up and look at the island from above and find a nice little place. So we have a nice little harbour up here, here, and here. So in the top right, in the far left, and then central bottom, we have a nice little island as well here. What I think I would like to do is actually work on this bit here. Kind of at odds with the natural harbours. What I think we can do is we can turn the water off by clicking the cog and hitting display ocean, and then hit objects again so you don't have a brush. We have a nice large area before the island drops away down to the sea floor. So what I thought we could do, oh, here's another little bug. So the shadows when you turn display ocean off kind of behave strangely. So they're okay here, but when we go above the level that we turn the ocean off, they kind of misbehave. So if you go back to terrain, turn the ocean back on, look up at the sky, ocean off, and then the shadows will behave. It's just a little thing to keep in mind. So where we don't have a harbour, and what we do have is a little bit of raised terrain, and what I thought we could probably do is just throw some rocks in the ocean and just add another little story here. And I think, yeah, possibly here, just next to this headland. Right, so it is a lot of terrain underwater, so we're not in danger of building too close to the abyss, which is something I'm kind of keen to avoid. Turn the ocean back on. Terrain, yes please. Raise and lower, yes. Amount slider all the way down, raise slightly. change the size of the brush down. We use a nice soft brush. There are other brushes here. They're not that useful. I have a feeling they're standard Unity brushes maybe, but really not that useful. The square one, no. We want the round one, maybe the round one with a hard edge, and those are the two brushes we'll use. The soft round one is really the one you are going to be using the most. So raise, I'm just going to bring the geometry out, the island geometry out a little bit here, because maybe the survivors did try and get away. Maybe there is another story to tell. So we'll bring out the terrain. It's kind of hard to see what's going on. We'll turn the ocean off for a second. So oops. It's an interesting one. Even though we have the cog selected, we're in settings. We're not doing anything. The brush shows, but we have to go back. It's just there to catch you out, really. Okay, so we're just going to bring this terrain up, and you can maybe see it jumping up a little bit. I'm going to do that all the way out here, and then I'm going to go back and soften the terrain. Because as soon as you soften the terrain, you lose altitude. In fact, I'm going to crank the amount slider up a bit more. Now, it does need to be deep enough for things like sharks to swim around. If it's too shallow, you might find sharks start swimming under your island, and that's not a thing you really want. I'm going to crank the amount slider up because we're now on smooth height. In fact, I'm going to crank it all the way up and just brush out here. There we go. I fear we might need to do this a lot. One of the bugs that the 1.0 update, the live update, pushed out with it was weirdly low levels of detail when you're close to the island. So you'll see a lot of jagged geometry, a lot of triangles on the beach, no matter how much you ride the old smooth brush tool. It may look different in game, but unlikely. And it's one of those bugs that's slightly frustrating. So we're going to turn the ocean back on. Okay, so now we have a nice smooth, soft beach, but that's not quite what we want. I'm going to hit read terrain paint height. I'm going to read from just under here. The amount slider is all the way up, and I don't want that, so I just want to push this down a bit, and push and left click. It can only go down as far as we've read, so it can't go down too much. And then I'm going to read again from here, just the wet sand, change the size of the brush down, bring it out slightly. Okay, so what we're doing is creating a very small bay. Nice. Okay, good. Smooth things out while we have... Oh, crank it all the way up. While we have this brush. Now, what we don't want, I think what we possibly have... Ooh, all the way up, slightly bigger, I think. Yeah. I don't want the sand to be completely flat. So you can be in a situation where the sand is suddenly very, very flat. I think the sand should be, well, it should rise and fall, kind of like an ocean wave, kind of like we've got here. So we've got 1, 2, 3 little peaks poking out into the ocean. That's good. We're going to hit up objects, hit up structures, and we have 2 options. So what we can do is find one of the wrecks. We've got the shipwrecks here. And we have the life raft. So realistically, one of the things that the aircraft might have had is a life raft. Now we could put that here on the island. We could even put it in the little pond so that when a player comes along, they can find the life raft. And that's fine, but the player will already have a life raft. So I'm going to get rid of that. What I'm looking for is the rowboat. And I think it might actually be labeled as rowboat. Yeah, there you go. So what I want is it in the water deep enough to be wet, but not so deep as to be completely hidden. Sometimes scale is very difficult to judge until you put an object into the game. So the aeroplane, and if you have trouble with that, you can always use the door as well, because the door represents the size and height of a player. You can just drag it and move it around. This is good. We got some water there. we're going to need to grab some rocks and kind of decorate this area. So I want some trees, I want some rocks. So I'm going to build up the area to the right of the rowboat. We can also check another thing. We can change the time of day and just see how tide affects the boat itself, because what will happen, there's low tide, so the water is below the plank just in front of the camera. And there's high tide, so the water is actually just covering the plank. Yeah, just covering the plank, just touching the top of that plank. So if you needed to know how high and low the tide rises, well, about the width of one in-game plank. So that's nice. I think that's fine. So we'll go up and we'll grab some objects and we'll close that. I'm going to grab some rocks. We are going to start off with small rocks. We can actually start off with shoreline rocks. They are might be a pretty decent shout to start off with some shoreline rocks. We have two shoreline rocks. Shoreline rock 1 with these big flat rocks. Don't use that because as soon as you let go, it's very hard to click on them to select again. Shoreline rock 2, you can click off and then select it again by clicking the center rock. Very, very easy in comparison. Even if there's nothing else in the area, shoreline rock 1, very hard to select. So yeah, save often. T to transform, which is just slide it in the XYZ coordinates. R to rotate if you need to. These things tend to be okay the way they are, but I'm going to start grabbing some small rocks. Terrain objects, just to get rid of any selections. And then what we're going to do is just grab some extra small rocks and just pull them out and just throw them in here. This is just saving us a little bit of time by having this this geometry that we can just pull out. So small 1, and we can rotate. I don't want it clipping through the rock, so I don't want it just clipping through weirdly. It's probably not that noticeable, to be honest, but as long as it's in the sand. At this point, the game's not going to be rendering coral and things, so if we turn off the water, anywhere where you see these footprints underwater, let's go to objects. So the footprints ahead of us underwater, that's where coral and rocks and things will be. If it's the smooth sand, that will just be sand in-game. So you're pretty safe when you're coming to put things down. So I'll turn the ocean back on, go back to objects, and go back to rocks. I'm just gonna... What I want is an ocean, a seawall without making it look like it's a seawall. So a natural collection of rocks. Something where the survivors might have felt comfortable putting a boat in the water. In fact, what we can do is rotate it slightly and just put the tail down slightly. That's okay. So we have all of these here. What I'm going to do, terrain objects. Sometimes you can be in a situation, if you have an object selected and then you pull something out from the toolbox, the object will either rotate or start sliding depending on whether you have transform or rotate selected. I think it might just be just a Windows thing. I don't think you'll have that on the console, but it's always best to have the objects deselected before you do something. So what I'm going to do is take a big rock and do exactly what I've done before. I'm going to jam it into the ground in such a way that in fact part of it is buried. I don't want to obfuscate the things that we have already placed in the ground, but I want to do it in such a way that we can raise the terrain up around it. And then we can actually hit C to clone, E to transform, and move the cloned object around, R to rotate, and flip that all the way onto its back, T to transform, and then R to rotate. And again, T just drags it into the ground. Good. Excellent. So we have a huge chunk of rock just here, and I think you can already guess what we're going to do with that. We're going to go to terrain, going to go to raise, make sure the amount slider is all the way down and then just bump it off the stop slightly. Make sure the brush isn't too big, In fact, what we can do is use a smaller brush and use the hard brush. Okay. And just left click and hold. And that's going to create a large, somewhat ugly mass. Not so bad. What we can do is then hit smooth height, crank that up, use the soft brush, and just smooth it off. We don't really need to smooth the back off, but that's okay. And then kind of do the same thing. Make sure the amount slider is all the way down again. Let's raise this up. And what I want is the sand or even dirt to come in here. And just fill this up slightly. There we go. Because we have the rocks here, we can have the sand raised up slightly in between the rocks. It just makes for an interesting little vignette. And what I really want is to raise this up enough to start getting a little bit of grass on it. Can we do that? How high would we actually need to go? I think we might need to add some more rocks there, just to make that work. Okay, and fill this in. Ideally, I'd like some sand between these two areas, but that's okay. We can bring this out slightly as well, so it's just not piled up. Good. Objects, rocks, please. I'm going to use a slightly different one. R to rotate, T to transform, and then R to rotate. Just open that up slightly. The danger is if we do this, what we can end up doing is just blocking this off as a path to the player, and I don't really want to do that. R to rotate. So we might just paint some sand in the bottom maybe. That's okay. So, terrain objects, and maybe we can add another... Oh, in fact, what we could probably even do is bring that up. Nice, and then rotate it. Okay. And can we do the same thing here? Yeah, we can. Okay, that actually works slightly better. So we'll rotate this. T to transform. And bring it up. Okay, good. So, terrain objects, make sure we don't have anything selected. And what we can probably do is tidy this up slightly by raising this up. Make sure the mount slider is down. Using a smaller brush, a much smaller brush, and just painting in so the dirt fills in some of this rock. Ah, can you do that? Yes, you can. Well, that's what we're doing. So, because you can have a very steep edge to the sides of the island geometry because it's just clipping through the rock, it looks like the dirt is piled up on one side, but not the other side. Ooh. Which allows you to have very interesting differences between areas on your shoreline. Okay, do the same thing here. And there's a reason for this, so we'll get into that momentarily. So, smooth, please. Mount slider slightly higher, size slightly higher. Left click and just tap it down. Okay. Some places you can left click and hold, and some places, if you want to be slightly more experimental, you can just give it a little tap. We might need to bring this up slightly here as well. So all the way down, because you're using the raise and lower tool, and they are volatile at best. So bring this up out here, and smooth it back. Okay, that's fine. Okay, good. So there's nothing. Well, there is a little point here. Change the size down. And push that point down. Okay, good. So what we're going to do is go to objects and add some trees, because of course we are. Focus tree 2. Because why would we not? Unfortunately, that would look a little bit weird the way it is. So we're going to drop it down. R to rotate. Until we get a branch that we are happy with. I think that is a branch that we're happy with. Knock it over slightly. T to transform. Okay, good. It's snapped onto a rock. I think we can still select the tree. We can. Good. Excellent. What we'll probably do is put another tree here. Which I think I will do. Drop that down. And I think, honestly, we can rotate it slightly. What we don't want is these two trees to look like they've been pulled out of the toolbox, because they are the same tree. So rotate them, change the angle, spin them around, and it'll make them look like two very different trees. Good, excellent. We are going to go to objects, and we are going to close this up. We're going to go to terrain. Now we have that all painted in. And I'm just going to increase the apron of sand around the bottom. For that, I'm just going to read terrain paint height. Click terrain to read height. There. Amount. So it set the target value for us by doing that. Change the size up. And then just click. Click and hold, click and drag. Just going to paint that out slightly until the water goes away. Okay. Good. Because I want the player to be able to walk out here as well. We are also going to read from the slightly drier sand and just paint that in. Might need to smooth this off, but that's okay. So just going to zigzag around here. And then smooth, please. Slightly large brush. Let's push and hold and get rid of all those little triangles. I think an even bigger brush. Yes, please. There we go. What I don't want to do is start pushing the dirt down around where the trees are. Okay, good. Excellent. Well, that's still there. We might need to bring this out slightly because it's a little too deep there. So we can raise the terrain. And I'm going to do that with the ocean on. It's going to bring this out here. Because I'm just looking at the color of the ocean. I just want that to be a little lighter around here. It's going to get lighter and darker anyway because of the way that the clouds and sun interact with the game. The clouds don't actually interact with the water or the terrain. That is just it's just effective lighting. Display ocean is off. Okay, so we've brought this out. Raise. There we go. So we've just raised all this up slightly, which is nice. Good. Don't really need to smooth it, so I'll leave that for the time being. Turn the water back on. Actually, we probably can smooth it. So, amount, fairly high. Size down to a reasonable size. Okay. Just get rid of some of those weird light effects. That's better. Oh, that's much better. It looks like you can walk along and get your toes wet without getting chomped off by a shark. Alright, rocks. Well, we should probably throw in some small rocks because we've got this far. Just to break up this edge here. So rotate, T to transform. You can actually just bring it out all the way. There we go. Just a little fork in the road. Small rock. We'll rotate. There we go. T to transform and bring it back. Okay, good. So just breaking up the straight lines, really. But that thing's in shadow. Well, it is now. But at different times of the day, it won't be. We'll put the sun overhead. Right, objects. Okay, we can close the rocks up, and we are going to go to trees. We're going to get the old nana plant, because that is a good structural plant. I'm going to put that down, pop it against the ground, rotate, just cant it over, make sure the leaves aren't really obviously clipping through the rocks, because, well, you don't really want that. I do want the plant to be in the ground, which it is not. There we go, that's much better. Yeah, a little bit of greenery there. We can also add, because we want people to come here, we can add ourselves a bit of a yucca tree. So we can throw that in. Just to have that in such a way that it's not obviously clipping through the ficus. Good. Lava. Yeah, that thing really doesn't have a purpose. But it does add some green to the ground, so I'm going to throw that down. And if we're going to throw that down, we should probably throw the PP down as well. That's nice. Okay, good. Pine saplings we can leave for the time being. Palm fronds and other things we can put in physics items, but we won't do that just yet. We haven't put any palm trees in. Now we can put palm trees in. Fairly straightforward. What we can do is, in fact what I will do is terrain objects, make sure nothing's selected, hit up rocks, hit up shoreline rock 2, drop you in here. Let's give it a little rotate. Yep. Shoreline rocks really help break up the shoreline itself. It's probably self-explanatory, but they also make it difficult to land a raft. So if you're putting them down, just make sure there are large expanses of sand that somebody can actually land a raft, especially a raft that doesn't steer very well. So then what you can do is close the rocks and then bring out some palm trees. So palm tree 1, tiny little palm tree. Or we can have giant palm tree. Thing is that when people chop the trees down, they will be left with the stump, and that will be pretty much it. Palm trees don't regrow. So what I'm going to do is put in rule of 3. Just put it in, drop it down slightly. We might need to raise a... Are we okay for the sea itself? Well, we can check that. The water, in fact, you probably can't see it. The water comes up to here. So the blue is where the beach is, and anything that isn't blue is where the water is. Well, that's okay. I mean, we can raise that up slightly if it worries us. And we can use terrain set height. We can set from here. So just slightly higher area around the beach. Change the size down, change the amount down. And just left click slightly until the water goes away. Nice. Okay, good. We can lower slightly as well. Just the other side of this rock, I think. Lower, please. There you go. Nice. Okay, good. Objects, go back to palms. And if you're going to put 3 palms in, palms of different sizes. Let's pull that out slightly. So it's snapping on the rocks at the moment. Again, I'm not entirely sure why it does that, but it does that. Palm saplings, yes please. So just push it down slightly. And the only thing you can do with a palm sapling is rotate it. So it's a good idea just to make sure it is in fact touching the ground. That's fine, because when a player hits it with an axe, what will happen is it'll be replaced with the physics object. So a little rotate, just to make it so that, well, if you put a couple of these together, just so that it doesn't look like you pulled them out of the toolbox. I think that's fine. Good, excellent. So we can come over here. We can add a koala if we wanted to. We don't want to add it too close to the tree because sometimes it's hard to pick the fruit. Although currently the fruit is bugged in game, so you're not gonna be able to pick that anyway. little spin. The thing about this is it doesn't look too different, too dissimilar from the ficus. Speaking of ficus, what we can do is go and select ficus tree 1, in fact. And if we wanted to, we can just add a little bit more mass to this in here. So drop the tree down, just change its orientation using rotate. Whoops. Okay, so now we can't select that. We can change the camera's orientation and see if we can select it now, which we can. T to transform, so I'm going to bring that way down into the ground. R to rotate. And I don't want to block the view, I just want to add a little bit more greenery. Okay, so from this direction it just snaps onto something else, but that's fine. I think what we can do is if we can select it again. I don't think we've selected it. T to transform. No, that is the rock, not the tree. So I can move you away. Okay. And I just want to... If you have an object and you want to move it away, just slide it away on a single plane and then you can slide it back in fairly easily. There. Okay, good. So that should... it's even growing out of the trunk. That's excellent. So we've just added another tree without creating a world tree, but it's added slightly different branches. Excellent. We can add Kura, but I don't think that's necessary. What we could do though, a little bit of driftwood here. No, do we? I think, yeah, just put it here. It's not interfering with the PP or the lava. I don't actually think... I mean, they added that to the game, but yeah, and they didn't do anything with it. So, cocoa bush. Well, we can add another cocoa bush. We could add a banana plant even. But the trouble is, with adding a banana plant here, anyone wanting to jump over and onto those rocks is going to be blocked, because the banana plant is kind of hard to jump through. But honestly, that's not actually that bad. It's not too bad at all. So we now have this area here in the middle, which we kind of need to do something with. I'm going to change the time of day because we are a slightly bluer time of day. Nice. Excellent. So it doesn't seem like we've done much, but we have actually added quite a bit to the edge of our world. We've added the rowboat. So it adds a little suggestion that maybe these guys tried to load this thing up, maybe they found it, maybe they were planning to leave. Later on, what we can do is add some resources around here, specific to the survivors. So we've added some palm trees, and we've carried on with our little vignette. Oh, the camera's really struggling now. With the yuccas. We haven't gone too mad with putting plants and things here. But it is just another little point of interest on our island. And what we're going to need to do is just go around adding more points of interest. So good, I'm going to leave it there for the time being. If you like these videos, definitely leave a little like, leave a subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you want notifications, click the little bell, dingle the bingle. If you don't want notifications, don't click the bell, and I'll tell you what, I'll catch you next time.